They built 96 homes on his land, without asking, without paying, without even telling him. One day it was untouched woodland passed down through generations. The next, it was a beige maze of cookie-cutter houses, paved over with arrogance. The HOA said he'd abandoned it, that he probably wouldn't notice. The president, Karen Wendell, stood before news cameras, smiling like she owned the world. "We've followed all proper procedures," she said. "This land is now part of a thriving community." What she didn't mention, the forged documents, the faked maps, the signatures pulled from thin air. She thought she was untouchable, powerful, that no one would dare challenge her kingdom of lies. "Don't worry," she wrote in one uncovered email. "That old vet hasn't touched the land in years. We'll bury it in paperwork." But Karen had no idea who she was dealing with. Because Jack Milner wasn't just an old man with a fading memory. He was a veteran who had prepared for this exact scenario years ago. He had documents, cameras, legal land traps, and something far more dangerous than lawyers or news headlines: patience. And when the trap finally sprung, the fallout was unforgettable. Fraud, arrests, millions in damages, and justice served cold. But let's start at the beginning. My name's Jack Milner. I'm 61 years old, a retired Army vet, and a widower. I live just outside Austin, Texas, in a quiet little home with creaky floors, a screened porch, and a rocking chair that's seen more sunrises than most people. But the real heart of my life is 143 acres of woodland, oak, pecan, and cypress, stretching wild and deep. That land has been in my family since 1953, when my father came back from Korea, bought it with his mustering out pay, and swore it'd stay in our name for generations. I raised my kids there, taught them how to build a fire, how to shoot, how to listen when the forest speaks. My wife, Emma, God rest her soul, planted wildflowers along the south fence. There's a bench we built together that still sits under an old elm by the creek. Every inch of that land meant something. But after Emma died, it got hard. Too many memories. I moved into a smaller house a few miles away and leased the lower fields to a local farmer. Still paid the taxes. Still kept the deed clean. Still went out there once a month to walk the fence lines, check the trail cams, feel close to what I'd lost. And then, one hot Thursday afternoon in August, I took a drive past the northern boundary, a part I hadn't checked in maybe 2 months, and my stomach dropped. Right there, plain as daylight, was a cul-de-sac, with fresh pavement, street signs, manicured lawns, driveways full of new SUVs. I slammed the brakes, pulled over into the ditch, and just stared. This wasn't possible. I stepped out of the truck and walked in like a ghost, like I'd died and come back to a place I didn't recognize. There were homes, dozens of homes, identical, soulless, cookie-cutter nightmares, like someone had photocopied the American dream and spray-painted it beige. Every house had vinyl siding, plastic window shutters, and little signs that read, "Proudly managed by Whispering Pines HOA." I walked into the nearest sales trailer, heart thudding. A girl in her 20s, smiling like she was selling cupcakes, looked up from her tablet. "Welcome to Whispering Pines Estates," she said. "We've got model homes open if you'd like a tour." "A tour?" I asked. "What is this? Who gave you permission to build here?" She blinked. The HOA? This land's been part of our development for 4 years now. It was approved by President Karen Wendell." Karen. That name hit like a slap. Even before I knew the whole story, I felt the wrongness of it in my bones. I pulled out my phone and logged into the Travis County Assessor's office. It took a minute to load, and then, there it was, my name, still listed as the owner. No sale, no lease, no deed transfers, no subdivision filings, nothing. I could hardly breathe. 96 homes, built on my land, without my consent, without my knowledge. And that's when I understood. They had no idea I was still watching. You see, years ago, after another HOA tried to muscle in on the southern pasture, I got smart. Real smart. I had legal boundaries redrawn and locked into a trust. I installed trail cameras with cellular backup, motion sensors hidden in trees disguised as bird boxes. I worked with an attorney friend to draw up protective covenants with teeth, automatic financial penalties for unauthorized use, pre-filed injunction templates, easement denials, landmines on paper. So no, I hadn't just abandoned that land. I'd been protecting it in silence, waiting, watching. They thought I was just some old man with a flag on the porch and a bad knee. They were wrong. They built a kingdom on my soil, and they never stopped to ask who owned the ground beneath their feet. Well, they were about to find out. And honest to God, I almost felt sorry for what was coming. Almost. The next morning, I walked into the Travis County Recorder's office, boots dusty, title in hand, heart still pounding from the day before. The place smelled like printer toner and old carpet, rows of beige desks, flickering fluorescent lights overhead. I approached the counter, set the deed down, and asked the clerk to pull up my property file. She clicked away at her keyboard, then frowned. "There's no record of any sale," she said slowly. "Your property lines haven't changed since 1978. I nodded, jaw tight. That's what I thought. But how the hell was the HOA pulling permits? Filing construction requests? Collecting taxes? Something didn't add up. And when it smells rotten, you don't just walk away. You dig. That same day, I called Laura Reyes, my attorney, the same sharp-as-a-knife woman who helped me establish the land trust years ago. She'd seen HOA messes before, but this one hit different. She came to my house that afternoon, spread the papers across my kitchen table, plat maps, permit filings, tax assessments. She skimmed through them in silence, then looked up and said 5 words I'll never forget. "They're not just arrogant. They're cooked." And just like that, we were off. The deeper we looked, the uglier it got. Karen Wendell, president of Whispering Pines HOA, part-time Pilates instructor and full-time dictator, had filed a fake plat map. With help from her husband, an ex-realtor who'd lost his license 5 years ago, she redrew the property lines to make it look like my land was part of the HOA's jurisdiction. Then she started selling off parcels like she was running a garage sale. And how'd she get away with it? Simple. She filed the fake map in a neighboring county, not even Travis County, Bastrop, hoping no one would notice, no oversight, no cross-checking. And the developers? They didn't care. Money talks louder than due diligence. Can you believe that? She built homes with no legal foundation, literally and legally. 96 of them. Mortgages, contracts, warranties, all based on a fantasy. If it weren't destroying my life, I'd almost admire the nerve. Laura and I went full throttle. We pulled satellite images from Google Earth, month-by-month snapshots showing the gradual spread of construction, like cancer across clean lungs. My trail cameras captured workers trespassing, trucks digging, cement pouring. We even found forged signatures, mine included, on utility documents I'd never seen in my life. We compiled over 300 pages of hard evidence. Every lie, every fake form, every trespass. And yet, we didn't go to court. Not yet. Because I had one more trick up my sleeve, something I'd built into the land trust years ago. The eviction clause, ironclad, legally enforceable. If anyone ever occupied my land without permission, I had the right to issue immediate notice. No warning, no negotiation. So I did. 96 eviction notices, one for each home, delivered by hand, signed, sealed, personal. Some folks cried, some screamed, but I didn't back down. Because this wasn't just about land anymore. This was about principle. And by God, it was time they learned what happens when you steal from a soldier who still knows how to fight. The moment those eviction notices hit the mailboxes in Whispering Pines, the whole neighborhood caught fire, and not the kind you call the fire department for. Phones rang off the hook, homeowners panicked, and somewhere behind her suburban curtain, Karen Wendell finally realized she'd messed with the wrong man. That evening, I was making coffee in my kitchen when my cell buzzed. Unknown number. I picked up. "Mr. Milner?" she said, that voice soaked in sugar and venom. "I don't know what kind of scam you're running, but you're about to be buried in lawsuits. You just made a very big mistake." I chuckled, genuinely. "Karen, I've buried people for less than what you've done. You want a war? You just got it." And folks, that was the first time in years I felt alive. By sundown, the HOA had called an emergency meeting in their little community clubhouse. Karen stood at the front, flanked by a PowerPoint and panic. Homeowners demanded answers. She blamed a clerical mix-up, said some land boundary errors were causing confusion. Yeah, right. But word was already out. The Austin Chronicle dropped a front-page story. HOA built on stolen land. Residents panic as evictions loom. News vans showed up the next morning. Microphones, cameras, questions. Whispering Pines looked less like a quiet suburb and more like a crime scene, which, frankly, it was. Then Karen made a fatal mistake. She went on local TV and said, on camera, that I had abandoned the land and that the community had every right to develop it. I sat there in my den, watching her lie through her bleached teeth, and I thought, oh, honey, you just set yourself on fire. The next day, I marched into the County Planning Commission with drone footage, time-stamped photos from my trail cams, and a notarized declaration of trespass. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The evidence spoke louder than any courtroom outburst. By sunset, the police had issued citations to the entire construction company for trespassing. Work halted. Trucks left. Families stood on their porches staring at the chaos. And then, boom, the floodgates opened. Homeowners, realizing they'd bought homes on land that wasn't legally theirs, filed a class action lawsuit against the HOA, Karen, her husband, and the developers. Mortgage lenders froze the loans. Title insurance companies bailed. The financial structure holding that fake neighborhood together began to crack and sink like a house on quicksand. Karen tried to fight. She hired lawyers, called in favors, made statements. But my trap hadn't fully sprung yet. Remember those protective covenants I filed? They weren't just for show. They included penalty clauses. $5,000 a day per dwelling for unauthorized use of the land, adjusted yearly for inflation. We ran the numbers. By the time court papers were served, each home owed over $2.1 million in penalties. 96 homes. You do the math. Karen was sinking fast, and I was just getting started. And you know what? Watching her squirm under the weight of her own fraud, it didn't just feel like justice. It felt like redemption. The courtroom was packed wall to wall. No empty benches, no quiet corners. Summer heat hung in the air like a held breath, broken only by the soft whir of overhead fans. The wood-paneled walls seemed to close in tighter with every passing minute, like even the building itself was waiting to hear the verdict. Reporters scribbled notes. Homeowners sat rigid, pale-faced. And in the middle of it all sat Karen Wendell, in a sharp blazer and fake tears,
gripping a monogrammed tissue like it might save her from the storm she'd stirred up. She tried to play the victim, claimed she was misled, manipulated, just following recommendations. She blamed the developers, the title company, her own board, even, at one point, the homeowners who trusted her. Her voice trembled, eyes moist, but not once did she apologize. Not once did she look my way. And the judge? He wasn't buying a word of it. We laid it all out. The forged signatures, the false plats, the fraudulent filings across county lines. Laura, my attorney, held nothing back. We even showed time-stamped surveillance footage from my hidden trail cams, workers trespassing, trucks rolling in, concrete pouring. And then came the email, the one line that sealed her fate like a nail in the coffin. "Don't worry. That old vet hasn't touched the land in years. We'll bury it in paperwork." Silence. Pure, stunned silence. I watched the judge lean back, shake his head, and glance toward Karen like he was staring through her soul. And then, the ruling. All 96 homes were constructed illegally. The HOA is hereby dissolved. Karen Wendell and Jonathan Wendell are found guilty of fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and forgery. The courtroom erupted. Gasps, murmurs. A few homeowners cried, some out of fear, some from relief. The judge banged his gavel once more and announced the damages, $148 million in penalties, interest, and restitution. Every penny calculated from the protective covenants I'd filed years ago. $5,000 per home, per day of illegal occupation, inflation adjusted, ironclad. Karen? 6 years in prison, a lifetime ban from holding any position in real estate or community governance. Her husband got 3 years and lost his license permanently. Their name, once on every newsletter, welcome sign, and mailbox in Whispering Pines, was now a warning to every HOA board across the state. But I didn't walk away smiling just yet, because there were nearly 100 families, good, hard-working people caught in the middle, folks who'd bought homes in good faith. They were victims too, and unlike Karen, they didn't deserve to suffer. So I did what I knew was right. I offered every homeowner a deal. Buy your land directly from me, at cost. No markup, no middleman, no HOA nonsense. Just a fair deed and peace of mind. And most of them took it. They were grateful. One elderly couple brought me a casserole. A young mom cried as she signed her new deed. And later that fall I saw more than a dozen families from Whispering Pines at my veterans fundraiser, waving flags and shaking my hand. Some people said I was too generous, that I should have bulldozed it all and walked away with the payout. But I wasn't fighting for money. I was fighting for something bigger. This wasn't just about my land. This was about every person who's ever been pushed around by power-hungry busybodies who think they can bend the law to their will. It was about standing your ground, about not letting anyone rewrite your story with a forged signature and a smug smile. And as for Karen? Well, last I heard, she's teaching civic ethics to other inmates at the county jail. I suppose irony has a pretty good sense of humor. You know what's crazy? They all thought I was just some old vet clinging to the past, some harmless guy with a quiet porch and fading memories. But I wasn't just guarding trees, trails, or an old fence line. I was guarding a principle. Because in this country, no one gets to steal what's yours and walk away clean. Not with charm, not with paperwork, and definitely not with arrogance. And when Karen triggered the trap I'd set years ago, she didn't just lose her fake little kingdom. She proved, once and for all, that the law still means something. And as I walked out of that courtroom, past the reporters and the chaos, I didn't smile for the cameras. I smiled for Emma, for my dad, and for every quiet soul who believes that right still matters. Justice came knocking, and this time it came with handcuffs.